Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/usingyourpower. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And today I'd like to recommend Desire, The Journey We Must Take to Find the Life God Offers by John Eldredge. Welcome to Using Your Power. I'm David Andrew Wiebe, and joining me is
Maveen, Kaura.
How's it going, Maveen?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Great. So we're connecting after another weekend here. How was your weekend?
My weekend was good. Just did some quick shopping for Black Friday there. I know when this episode comes out, it'll be long past Black Friday, but picked up an iPhone 6 here with 128 gigs and got a really good deal on it.
Awesome. And yeah, the sales do continue well into January, if not all the way to the end of January anyway, because of Christmas, Boxing Day, on and on and on. So there's plenty of opportunities to get things on sale right now.
Absolutely. And that's what we did, right? So we got a good deal on the phone. We got a gift certificate with it and decided to buy a Samsung S4K TV as well. So
wow.
I got a really crazy deal on it. Couldn't give it up. So man, I'm excited to finally pick it up sometime in December and put it on the wall, and let's see what happens.
Great stuff. Well, today we're going to take a look at life-shifting moments. So why don't you tee this one up, Mav?
Wow. I think I brought this one to you. I just kind of thought about, things that I had experienced, things that you were going through, things that we had talked about. And, a lot of the things that we've talked about on this show are really about life changing experiences. So really what I was thinking about is really talking about those life shifting moments as well, because, everything I think happens in a moment. I believe once we're ready for it, we'll finally take the right step in the direction we want to go, right? So I'm really excited to talk about this topic because I do feel there's a lot of great value we can bring to people.
Yeah.
And help them see their own life shifting moments as well, because I know we kind of reviewed our own our 5 topics that we brought each to the table here, and a lot of things that we can all relate to, I think, as well. So
there really could be a lot once you start thinking about the different moments that you've had in your life. But yeah, thinking about 5, not saying it was the easiest thing in the world, but I think most of us could probably think of 5 moments if we really stepped back and thought about where we've come to this point, especially if you're 20, 30 and up. Maybe if you're still a teenager, you wouldn't necessarily think of, but who knows? A lot of things do happen when we're young, so.
Right. And, even if you're older too, right? I mean, there's a lot of different...
I would say there's probably more if you've had more time to experience life.
Absolutely. And you go into, let's say you're in your 60s and you listen to this show, and I mean, you've gone through all the different ages where you've seen the TV, the VCR come into fruition, the radio, TV, all the different computers, internet. Everything has come, right? Even like digital watches and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's so many things, and that's just the technology side of things. There's the space shuttle going to the moon and outer space, and us sending out satellites into space. And these are all things that have come, and they're all life-shifting moments for humanity. But I think we really want to talk about, just the micro, not the macro.
Yeah, talk about the personal life-shifting moments, and we all have those. I guess I'll start mine off. None of these are necessarily easy for us to share, I think, but a major life shifting moment for me was when my dad passed away. So I would have been 13 years old at the time, and my dad got into a motorcycle accident. So it would have been one of those intersections. I don't know if there's a flashing yellow or no lights or no signs or whatever. There's probably a yield sign on either side. So there's a big trailer truck that did not stop, did not yield, and so my dad had no choice but to kind of slam into the side of that truck.
Wow.
So he was in a coma for 10 days or so, but after that he didn't make it.
Wow. I actually did not know that, and I don't think I've ever asked you how your dad actually passed away. I just know you told me he passed away, and we kind of left it at that. So for you to bring that up today, David, that's pretty big.
I was called into the principal's office, which in Japan you're kind of always wondering, like, oh, are they gonna? They're calling me up to yell at me or something, and no, it was like urgent family issue, and then went to the hospital that day, and it was like, man, I don't even know what's going on, but it doesn't seem good. So yeah.
Wow. And we've talked on different episodes some of the impacts that's had for you positive and some of the negative impacts that's had for you as well. So I know it's never easy to bring that up, right? And what else is kind of I guess, how did your life actually shift when that happened?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking about going, and there are so many ways. I think at first it wasn't really. I mean, for me as a teenager, I just wanted to do my thing. So just play video games, hang out with friends, do whatever. So like not having a dad around meant there's nobody to hassle me not to do those things.
Right.
So in a sense, it was kind of that immediate freedom. But I think, one of the things that having a father means, it's sort of this unspoken protection that your dad offers. You don't even really think about it if you've had a dad all your life, or if you've had somebody that's actively being a parent versus somebody that's maybe checked out of life, even if they're still alive. So when you do have a good father, there is the sort of that sense of protection. So I think I felt immediately very kind of exposed to the world after my dad was gone. And, I also didn't really have anybody to show me how to fix a car, how to do an oil change, various normal, I guess, teenage or early adulthood things, those kinds of things I didn't really get to learn from a father. So.
Wow. And that's a great point I think you brought up, right? You never really think of your dad or your parents being security in your life, like a blanket almost, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, they do provide that level of protection to you as you're growing up as a child, or even into your 40s, right? I'm 38 right now, and I have great conversations with my dad. They're not always the best, but
right.
I know in the end that he cares and he looks out for me regardless of what our relationship looks like, right? So he always has my best intentions ahead of his own, even at many times of the day in his thoughts as well, right? So you're very right on that, right? The level of protection that your parents can provide you is different. So, let me ask you, did you have to shortly become like the man of the house, if I can say that?
Well, I think those were the kinds of things that people were telling me at the funeral. Like, okay, well, now you're the man of the household. It's like, I don't know what that means as a 13, 14-year-old. I eventually just became the mediator between my mom and my sister because they would often be at odds with each other. And so I felt like somebody in the house needed to have a cool head and be able to figure out the various situations, and it was all almost like emotional situations, right? Not necessarily arguments about money, or not necessarily arguments about practical life things that could be going on. It was just more around like, how somebody feels and how somebody felt mistreated, and that kind of stuff was really the topic of debate oftentimes. So being that mediator, and that's also connected to like finding my identity. I think that's really the biggest thing, is when you don't have your parents, like your parents sort of bestow an identity in you, whether you are aware of it or not. And sometimes that could be to your detriment too. But I don't think I had that, having, when my dad passed away when I was so young. I think I ended up not knowing really who I was.
Right. Well, even at age 13, like you said, people were asking you to take over his position and kind of like in the family as the father, or not the father figure, but the head of the family, right? And at 13 years old, like you said, yeah, you're not really, it's even hard enough first to contemplate exactly what just happened. You're at the funeral kind of trying to process everything, and people crying, and you're still trying to square away exactly how you feel, and then people are coming up to you and saying, hey, you're the man now, so you got to take care of this. And you're just like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, this isn't real, although this is actually happening. My dad will be back tomorrow. This is just kind of a thing that's happening today, right? It's not reality, it just hasn't set in. So for people to say that and try to make you shift when you're not ready, it's not always practical, but I think the way you did it kind of made sense, right? I mean, there's obviously a power struggle sometimes when there's two females in the house, and with your sister and your mom, it can be tough, especially on your mom, right? Because she was now gone from having somebody in her life constantly to now just having two kids and really having to figure out how to take care of them. So, I mean, I could see how you thought being level-headed was probably the best, decision you could make to bring peace to the house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's exactly as you described. I don't really have anything to add.
No. Well, and I know we've had these similar conversations, not in depth. I mean, this is the first time I've heard, like I said, the way your dad passed away. So it's
Right.
very, it took me back. I'm not going to lie to you, right? I know I had a friend of mine whose dad also passed away on on a motorcycle as well. And this
Yeah.
is years and years ago as well. I think when I was in my teens, I think I was probably 16, 17 and my friend's about 2 years older than me or so. So, I mean, that's what happened with his dad as well. And this was right here in Alberta and right in Calgary. And I mean, I can't even imagine what he went through. So I can kind of, now that I understand what you're going through, I can really place what he went through as well.
Well, I think I was still in Edgemont at the time, so it would have been within a few years of that happening. One of my friends also was in Japan. Actually, one of my friends in Japan was in a motorcycle accident, and so like he was also struggling with I guess an incurable disease of some sort as well. So that was already kind of rough on him. But then, probably in his early, or I guess late teens, maybe early 20s, he would have passed away in a motorcycle accident. So that it's a weird repeating theme in life sometimes, but it's how it is.
Right. Well, that's great, and thank you for sharing. I think that's important for a way for our listeners to really get to know each other, and this is what the idea of this topic really is really just talking about ourselves and just talking about those moments that everybody can relate. Everybody knows somebody who's passed away in a car accident or a motorcycle accident. Hopefully, if you don't, hopefully you never have to know somebody that has, and if you do, I think it's very relatable, and it's easy to really help other people that are maybe going through something like this down the road as well, right?
Absolutely.
So my topic I wanted to talk about, one of them was at least, I think the biggest shift that my parents made moving from India to Canada was probably one of the biggest shifts that I didn't know about because I wasn't born at the time, but that has impacted my life tremendously, right? Even sitting here today and recording with you could never have happened if my parents potentially had stayed in India, right? So some of the things I thought about was, who would I be? Who would I be if I stayed in India with my parents and they had never moved here? Would I still be the person I am today? Would I have the same thoughts I have? Would I have the same beliefs I have? Would I be more religious, less religious? Because, when you go to India, there are, a lot of dominant religions there, right? And a lot of temples and a lot of sacredness that, if people have gone to India, they understand there's that there as well, right? So who would I be? What would I be thinking? Would my thoughts be the same? Would my conversations be the same that I have with people? That's one of the things that I always think about. My uncle said to me one time, it was more of a conversation about my dad and, how he saw my dad. He respected him because he was able to come here and do the things he had to do, provide for his family. And the things he said was like, I could never do what your dad did, right? And I thought about that, and I think about my parents moving here. I don't know if I could have moved from India to Canada if I was at that, because we're in a great country living right now, and I can't see myself really leaving Canada to go somewhere else right now, where we are in life right now, myself and my wife. But it's kind of an interesting thing, right? So that I thought of.
I can relate to that because my dad was thinking about moving to Malaysia after a certain point. So maybe when I finished junior high or something like that, my sister and I were conveniently 3 years apart. So she would have been 3 years ahead in schooling, which would have meant she would have finished high school, or and I would have finished junior high or something like that. And then we would have moved from Japan to Malaysia, which of course didn't happen because my dad passed away. And so we moved back to Canada to be with family. But that's another very bold move that could have happened, and acclimating to a whole other culture. It was probably pretty hard for me to think about that at the time, and I probably would have had some resistance to moving to Malaysia. But I could see the plus sides as well, because we had visited there before, and my uncle was there too. Just would have meant like learning probably another new language, or at least a new way of communicating with people, going through a completely different school system, making entirely new friends, all that kind of stuff.
Right. And I think you just gave a great parallel story to what my parents probably went through when they came here, right? They came from India, where the culture is completely different than it is in Canada. They had to get acclimated to the language, the weather, because they moved to Montreal. That was the first place they decided to go, because that's where my uncle was, or my dad's brother was. And coming from a place where they were comfortable, knowing everything, everything, although they weren't rich, they were still decently well off. My grandfather had his own business out there, and my uncle and my dad really didn't want to continue on in his footsteps. They really did see things that were bigger, so they chose to leave, right? And I mean, it's very interesting, the life shifting moment they had, because whatever decision they had made at that time, I don't think they really realized how it would impact their unborn children, right? Because they had no children at the time. And my dad, even in 1975, wasn't even married to my mom at the time, right? So, I mean, he was thinking future before any of that even came along.
Yes. And that's a very bold thing to do. I think I'll change my second point slightly, but it still definitely ties in. I'd say when I discovered personal development as an idea, when I first came across Steve Pavlina, I think the way the story goes, or at least the way in which I remember it, first I would have heard about Steve Pavlina through Dirk Sivers. Dirk Sivers, former founder of CD Baby, would have still been the founder of CD Baby at the time, in 2007 or so. And I was kind of getting into his material, maybe even his blog at the time. I don't know for sure. But I think through him, I found out about Steve Pavlina. Once I started delving into that material, like, I was obviously exposed then to just the idea that one could make a conscious choice in life. I don't know if it was like victim mentality or something, but I just thought at the time that, like, life is whatever happens to you. It's not, you don't have a choice in the matter. And I guess it would be easy to feel that way if you've lost a parent at an early age as well. So, once I was exposed to personal development, like, it's been an integral part of my life now for 9 years or something like that, almost 10 years. Delving into books, blog posts, podcasts, various audios, and even in network marketing, although we'll get to that topic a little bit later. And, it led me to this point of, I think, in early 2008, where I decided I was going to get up at 6 a.m. every morning, except I just didn't do it in a very safe way. And this is something for all of us to think about, in the sense that if you don't, get enough rest, if you don't meditate, if you don't eat well, if you don't exercise, then, like, cutting down your sleep is probably the fastest way to manifesting disease or manifesting exhaustion. For me, it ended up culminated in a panic attack or anxiety attack in, like, early 2008. So then, then I spent the next 6 months or something recovering from that whole thing. And I even shared that on the podcast before, but I think we need to, that's why rest is important. If you want to manifest an autoimmune disorder like Parkinson's, then start losing sleep. That's a really good way to start, getting those diseases, especially if you're already prone to them, to start manifesting. But it was all a pretty major life shifting moment for me, because personal development, obviously I stayed with it despite some of the things that it brought about in my life, maybe because of my lack of understanding or lack of interpretation. Just really excited to get started on something, get moving on something that matters in my life. So I still held on to personal development, but having that panic attack obviously had to change the way I was living. So that was a life-shifting moment.
Wow. And that's true. I think you said it well, and you understood what the panic attack meant to you, how it affected you, and what it meant for your future if you didn't find some control. Is that right?
Yes. I was teaching guitar at the time, so I was in lessons, and I just felt I didn't feel quite right, but I didn't know exactly what it was. It was actually just stress building up over time. And so, on my way home, I'm still not feeling great. And, I'm telling my roommates, like, I'm just kind of feeling these pains, and it was getting worse. And I chewed on I guess aspirin tablet or whatever, like you're supposed to when you have a heart attack. So like it wasn't a heart attack, but it feels like it. It feels like your chest is kind of leaping, or your heart's leaping out of your chest, kind of thing. So anybody that's experienced it kind of knows what that feels like, and it's not much fun. But yeah, loss of control would obviously be a major contributing thing, and then maybe grasping for that control again is part of what caused it to manifest.
Right. I can give a great example as well. You're talking about stress and what stress did, and you allowed it to build up and build up and build up until it manifested itself, right? And that's kind of where I was as well. Maybe about now, let me think, probably about 2003-ish, if I remember correctly. That's when I started developing symptoms of ulcerative colitis, or just colitis, right? So that's of the lower intestines or large intestines, right? So what happened was, like, I was healthy. I felt healthy. I did healthy things. I was working out, but I allowed the stress of a previous relationship get to me, and that stress, I never dealt with it properly. I never dealt with the breakup properly, and although I seemed happy on the outside to everybody else, on the inside, even to myself, I didn't realize that I wasn't happy. I hadn't dealt with what I needed to, and one day I had a pain in my stomach, and it was just like, okay, this is not normal, but hey, it's just a pain. And I mean, we've all experienced pain in our
Just
body
random
somewhere, right?
creaks
Yeah. So, I don't think anything of it. And it continued on and on and on. And I had some different symptoms that I kind of monitored and said, well, this is not normal, right? Like having blood come out of you when it shouldn't. And, but I monitored it, and about 3 weeks later, it was gone. So I thought I had taken all the right steps, and I healed myself, and, but little did I know, 6 months later, I would be hit with the same pain in the exact same spot in my stomach. But this time, within a matter of 3 days, I lost 12 pounds. And I knew there was something wrong with me. And I couldn't keep any food down. I couldn't absorb any food. Everything I ate was number 2 on the way back out. And it really never worked, right? And I knew there was something wrong. And especially when I was at that time about 155 pounds. And to lose 12 pounds of your weight, which is almost, I don't know, what is that, about 8% of your body weight.
Wow.
In a matter of 3 days. That's a lot. So I actually checked myself into the hospital, and so I totally understand, right? If you don't take care of yourself, the way that stress manifests itself within you is always different for different people. The way that stress for you was for a panic attack, that stress for me was ulcerative colitis, right? And we've talked about being on medication, and in our different, in our pharmaceuticals episode, we talked about that, and how we didn't want to be on that, and how we've done certain things to stay off medication after we've tried to cure ourselves.
Well, so interesting how maybe you weren't aware of whether or not you should stay in that relationship in a conscious level, but subconsciously your body is already telling you, get out. This is not right for you. This
was actually already out of the relationship.
Oh, okay.
And
so it's like after.
Yeah, I'd already been out for probably probably about a year. But still, somewhere within me, it was still, I hadn't dealt with it.
It's kind of like an aftershock of the whole thing.
Yeah, pretty much like an earthquake aftershock. Yeah, for sure.
No, I mean, that's exactly how it can happen. So, you often find people that aren't in great relationships also sickly. And, it's not hard to see why. Somebody tells you day after day, you're worthless, you're no good. Who are you to tell me blah, blah, blah. Pretty soon, this is a bit of pseudoscience, but like Dr. Masaru Emoto, he did the studies of waters and water crystals. You might be familiar with that too, Maveen, where water that's blessed over time has a different crystal structure than water that has been cursed. And so with our bodies made of 70-80% water, it's not hard to imagine that like the property of your body and on a molecular level begins to change as you hear different words coming through the ear gate. And it's not about necessarily the words that are coming in so much as how your brain is interpreting them.
Wow. Yeah, no, I've never heard that, but I mean, it makes absolute sense, right? It's just like they say, garbage in, garbage out, right? So It's the same type of concept. If you're putting in good things in your head, good things will come out of your head and body as well, right? So I do get it, for sure.
Yeah. And then for me, like 2011 was a pretty major breakthrough year. I think the first half was terrible, or first half was amazing, kind of thing. But I think even the terrible sometimes turns around and into something good. So you don't really know until the story's done. You haven't read to the end, so how would you know whether or not that's going to be something good in your life? So I'm not too quick to label anything terrible myself, but I was in financial trouble, maybe even desperation. I was behind on mortgage payments and bill payments, and I was working 5 jobs, 5 part-time various work, and probably working 55 hours a week if you include driving time and other outside of the workplace type tasks. It was probably 65 hours a week. So it was a lot of hours, and it was a lot of time spent away from home and unable really to focus on anything creative all that much, at least certainly not as much as I would have liked, and trying to deal with these financial troubles that I was in. And then I also had an awful roommate, like the worst roommate you could imagine, living with me at the time and sort of paying his rent, but kind of not. So like anything I could do, right? Just renting out rooms, renting out the garage, any way to kind of bring that money in and ease that pressure. And so it was around that time that I actually started learning about business and network marketing. And I was exposed to various audios that began to change my mind, which also surprisingly and maybe even seemingly miraculously began to change my life. And that's kind of what set some seeds in motion for my life moving forward from that point. So joining a network marketing organization, the way in which that ultimately impacted me was the business education that I got, the people I met. We talked about it in the network marketing episode, so you can always go back and have a listen to that one if you want to hear it more in depth as well. But obviously moving forward, it's given me a frame of reference for how to handle money. That's a huge one. And we'll definitely be covering that subject too. But knowing how to manage and oversee and use your money to live the life you want are some major things that I took away from that. But that was still several years down the line. So I was in network marketing for 4 or 5 years or something like that.
Yeah, no, and same as myself, right? I was in network marketing for 5 years. More of a, not really a participator, more of like, I guess, a hangout, checking out what was going on, applying in the information, trying it out kind of guy. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say that I gave it a full effort because I don't think I did in hindsight, right? At that time, I think I was giving the best effort that I could based on what I knew. Obviously, knowing more now, I could probably give an even better effort at this point. But you're right. I mean, getting into network marketing was probably one of the largest life shifting moments for myself as well. That's when listening to motivational audio came in for me. That's where reading came back as well, right? Which I've mentioned. I know I wasn't reading as much as I would love to have after I left high school, right? And once I got into network marketing, it really put me on the path of wanting to learn more. And that's exactly what my next point really is reading that one book that changed my life, right? And it wasn't just the one book. There was actually 3 books that made an impact in my life. And it was all because of network marketing making me want to read, right? And it's not that it made me read, but it was the concepts about it, right? That if you read, you improve yourself. So, the 3 books that I read, one of them being The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, right?
Yeah,
and that one came out in 1988. So, I mean, that book came out years and years and before, and that book was actually bought for me by a friend who said, hey, I think you're going to love this book and enjoy this book. And she gave it to me, and I read it, and I still have the exact same book and the exact book she gave me. And I've recently bought books for people as well that say, hey, this is kind of a cool book. Can I borrow it? No, you can definitely have your own copy, because the story itself is about a guy that in just quick terms goes out and goes for his dream, right? And goes through the struggle of thinking, oh man, can I do it? Can I not do it? And takes his time and learns on how to go for his dream, and eventually through the struggle and gets the victory. Right?
That's right. I would say, books have had a major impact on me too. And I can think of John Eldredge's Desire. I think I've mentioned him before. And say what you will about his religious or philosophical beliefs, but I think if you actually delve into the content of some of the books, maybe not all of them, because not all of them are going to be right for everybody, but you might find 1 or 2 that really speaks to you. And so Desire was one of them for me. And desire is such a foundational thing in life when you really think about it. It's like what is driving you at a core level. If you really think about it, it's not really your goals. Your goals are coming from your desire. So like at a more foundational base level, we are all driven by desire. So I think getting a perspective on that in your life is such a powerful thing, and getting a grasp on it and beginning to understand what desire means for you, and how the universe and God or whatever you believe in interacts with that desire.
No, absolutely. And, the same thing for me. I had a book, it's called Buddha Is as Buddha Does. And that book actually came out in 2007. And at that time, when I was reading that book, I was really wanted to, kind of start learning about different cultures and different thought processes. And, why do people say one religion is better than the other, right? So I really wanted to start delving into understanding that one's not better than the other, they're just different, right? And when I read that book by Lama Surya Das, it really made me, it opened up my mind, and it opened up my thought process. And, and it's funny, as soon as I had read that book, and, we talk about a life-shifting moment, once I read that book, and I'd always wanted a tattoo, and I never really knew what to get. And once I read that book, I actually got a tattoo. So I actually have one on my back on my left-hand side. So it's interesting, right? And that was a moment where once I read that book, it really showed me clearly that we're all the same. And, and I'm hoping that everybody that, listens to this sees that it's not a Buddhist talk, it's not a Christian talk. This is just a person talk, right? So I think those two books that we mentioned right there are huge. The third book, which I know you've read as well, and it's probably had some sort of impact for you too, David, is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, right?
Sure. That
book, when it came out in 1997, had already been a bestseller by the time I had got to it, probably you too, right? And when I read that book and heard that book on audio as well, the ideas behind it were just amazing. I was really wanting to get into real estate. I think I actually heard that book and read that book when I was working for a local home builder here in Calgary as well, right? So it was a great book for me to read, and it really wanted me to start thinking about how I could do my own investing, right? I mean, investing, and he's talking about investing in 1970, and I mean, those times have changed and things have changed for sure.
Real estate.
Yeah, and he's made a killing in Hawaii and now all over the U.S. with his investments. But I mean, a lot of those principles can be still used today. What is that? Almost 20 years later, right? From when he put out the book. I'm sure there's things if you keep up with the economy that you just have to kind of get an idea. I know my dad, my mom, my wife, and myself were having a conversation yesterday. My mom actually just got back from Rochester, and we're just talking about maybe what the real estate market looks like out there right now. Not Rochester, New York, not really a lot of different jobs or opportunities out there like you would think maybe in Calgary or in New York. Nothing like that. It's really a smaller town, but we're just talking about the different home prices. And if we were looking to invest in something, I mean, you can buy a home on a 1 acre lot for about $270,000, and you got probably a good 65 foot backyard that could back up onto a forest. I think that's kind of a cool little place to even retire if you wanted to.
Yeah. I think I read Rich Dad Poor Dad like 1 or 2 years ago, and it's a very inspiring and motivating read. So I didn't read it while I was very active in network marketing. It was kind of after, but it really is like an essential book for financial literacy. Teaches you the basics. Most people couldn't tell you what the 4 ways of making money are, right? And he says cash flow quadrant, ESBI, employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor. There's 4 different ways to make money in life, and most people tend to depend on the ES when if they want freedom in their life, they should be moving towards the BI. So he doesn't tell you how to do any of those things. You can definitely I think you can still buy books from him on the subject of like investments or real estate or some of the other things that he's done. But it's a read that will provide you with the absolute basics of what it means to make money and how to make money in the ways that you actually want to make money.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you can also, not that I'm condoning or not condoning, it's up to our listeners as well. I mean, he does also have his own podcast out, and he does take a lot of the principles that he talks about in his books, and he does do great interviews with some great people, and talks about, what their experiences are either in the real estate market and kind of what his viewpoints are as well, right? So, I mean, he's still out there educating people, same way he did about 20 years ago with that book.
That's right. And then another major, moment for me was when I sold my house, which kind of came as a direct result of being involved in network marketing. It's actually only 4 years ago still at this moment in time. So it's somewhat recent, but I had my mentors, you were in regular contact with your mentors in network marketing. You talk to your upline, or at least you're encouraged to do it. Doesn't mean we all did it, but I certainly, we had those communication inbox system. I would always send them one every single day. Here's one update. Here's what's going on. Did it all the time, and I'm sure, I don't know, maybe they got tired of it, maybe not, but like I didn't make any progress, so,
right.
Or at least I was having a really hard time making progress in that particular business model. But as conversations went on, I think they could see as much as anybody else that the house was becoming too much of an obsession, too much taking up way too much mind space. And at this point, like, I definitely have to agree. I want my own place. I have that desire right now to go and find my own place. I may not buy it necessarily. There's a good chance I would still rent it at this point, just so I could kind of do more of the social things that I want to do. But that was still a good move at the time. And so selling my house obviously put some money back in my pocket, because it was like 9 years on the market. So, 2003 and 2012 or something like that, completely different markets.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I probably sold it for 3 times its value, if not more, or somewhere in there. And or at least twice its value, I would say. So, I was able to pay off my debt and pay back my mom for some of the things that I'd owed her for. And that was a pretty good feeling. Subsequently, I still went back into debt. So, you can still make bad decisions even having kind of worked through them once. But eventually, I did find my way back to where I am now, which is probably one of the best places I've been in terms of financial literacy and knowing what to do with my money. So a lot of valuable lessons were learned through that. And there's a lot of transitions, because I was I think I just turned 30 as I was about to sell my home. So, anybody that's been there knows, but like it doesn't necessarily make you depressed or sad or anything. It just kind of makes you go like, okay, I have a limited amount of time to make my mark, and as a man, that's what we think about, is like, how am I going to leave an impact on this world? What's my legacy going to be? And I think those are some of the serious questions you begin to consider as you turn 30.
Right on. And, you made some good points. There's, everybody who's listening to the show is at different points in their life. There are some people who are thinking about today selling their home, and there's people sitting there today thinking about buying a home, right? I mean, we've done a full episode on that as well. And there's definitely that for our listeners to check out again, if you haven't already heard it. But, I take the other viewpoint where, I was mentioning that I had recently just bought a home a little while ago, and,
you did.
We were in different places at that time. But I went through the same type of process. I had my old place from before. Now we have it as a rental income. So, kind of using the information that I'd read in the books from Robert Kiyosaki. Now, like we were talking about earlier, like you were saying how your parents have almost that security blanket over you, right? So without even knowing it. So a lot of the stuff that, we've been able to do with the family is really use our money like family money, right? Something that we talked about in a previous episode as well, and purchase different rental properties because of having that type of thought process, right? Like I could have my own 10 rental properties if I wanted to or chose to, but doing it slowly, doing it smart, ensuring that all of them are making money and not just losing money on it, and they're sitting vacant, right? Because those are things we don't want, right? So using that type of idea has definitely created kind of the thought processes that we want, or at least me and my wife want in this case, because it's definitely made a difference for us, right?
Yeah. And I'm not sure if I finished this thought or not, but I was just going to say, my mentors encouraged me, obviously, to sell my house. That was one of the deciding factors in the whole thing. But financially, I knew, like, I'd refinanced my mortgage probably like a year prior. So I didn't even know you could do that. That's part of how I escaped some of the trouble I was going through in 2011. But within about a year or so, I was kind of back to where I was and needed to sell the house or figure something else out financially, which I didn't even understand. Like, I was like, I don't even know how I could be back in that same position, but I did get there.
Let me ask you, like, how old were you when you first bought that house?
Would have been early 20s.
Wow. And being 20 years old, that is a huge shift that you have to make as well, right? Because not everybody is ready to be financially responsible for buying a home at age 20. So, I mean, you took a huge risk, huge step to go out there and do what you thought was the best step for you at that time, right? And even making money by selling the home, is a great financial step as well. I know a lot of people, when I was in the real estate industry as well, that they would hold on to their home for about, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever they wanted to. And then they would, use the market increase to sell their home, buy another home, a smaller one, maybe a same size, try to take the money, the capital that they've gained on it and try to put it back towards a new place and then keep buying their home that way. And maybe over a 10-year, 15-year period, they'd have their home paid off in cash, right? That way. I mean, that's definitely one way to do it. And, but we have to always look at, there's always things that can happen to us, right? There's always life-changing moments. And, being 20 and then coming to your 30s, I mean, there's a huge gap in there of things that you want to experience and things you want to do. And who wants to be house poor, right? So,
yeah. My mom was planning on moving to Edmonton, and that never came to be. But it was during that time that she encouraged me to buy a house, and so I did. I have, and all these events definitely connect. But my dad had passed away, so I'd had a bit of a inheritance from that, and that was one of the reasons I was able to move into a home. I assumed the mortgage; I didn't take on a new one, so that's just like taking over the previous owner's mortgage and then continuing to pay it off in that capacity. And so I don't know if I was ever financially responsible enough for a house at that point. Maybe I was getting there, but just not quite. Just, had other savings and other investments and other things that enabled me to do that for a time.
Right on. Well, just moving on along. So one of the things that I had is, and I know you can definitely look at this as well, because you've done some traveling too when you were younger, and even at this age you've done some traveling. And one of the things that impacted my life, was actually traveling back to India at the age of 24 with my whole family. So it was me, my sister, it was my mom, my dad. My dad actually met us after in India. So we actually was me, my sister, and my mom. We actually went together, and my dad met us probably, I think, a couple weeks later, about a week later or something like that, after he tied up some loose ends. And he, his plan was really, he wanted us to have the full India experience, if I can say it like that.
Sure.
He had planned to show us everything, and that's what we did, right? He took us all over the place. So not only did we learn the culture that's in India while we were there, I did my best to try to take part in it. I tried to dress like them and dress like the people in India, and I couldn't fit in, right? Because my haircut was different, my accent's different, even if I spoke the language, because I can, but I just really could never fit in, right? But it was an interesting thing trying to fit in and be part of a culture that, I've grown up in Canada at home, but it's very different when you go to the culture there and you have to get acclimated to the people there, right? It's extremely different. And, I had an opportunity to meet all my family, my mom's brothers and sisters and their kids, and my dad's sisters. I met my dad's brother because he's in Montreal. So, I grew up with my cousins that way. But we had an opportunity to meet all my nieces and nephews and cousins and second cousins and all the once removes and whatever. So, but, I just call them cousins and I call them family. And we had an opportunity to meet them all, and they're all in different places, but they're all loving and they'd never really known me. So that was kind of a neat trip too, to see that there's a whole family on the other side of the planet that loves and respects me because of all the things my parents have done for them, or who my parents are because of they grew up together. So it's just kind of a neat thing to experience when I really sat back, years later when I came back from that trip, we had an opportunity to visit a lot of important sites. And I say important because I'm talking about religious sites, right? So we had an opportunity to go to different temples and more temples. And funny story was we had gone to already 2 temples or 3 temples that day. And I'm like, hey, to my parents, hey, where else are we going? And they're like, well, we're going to go to another temple. And I just had enough. And I was just like, all we're doing is, and I'll say it in English because it doesn't make sense if I say it in Indian to most people, but, in Indian, I pretty much told them, I said, all we're doing is getting out of the car, we're going to the temple, we're bowing our head, and we just keep bowing our head and bowing our head, and I'm not getting anything out of this anymore, right? So I pretty much wanted to stop and not continue that, but, I'm happy I did, and, my dad kind of understood where my frustration was coming from. But, we kept going, and we went deeper and deeper into the mountains, and I understood that, that there's something about going deeper into the mountains and getting connected to yourself where there's not a lot of population. And and as I even asking my parents, like, why are all these temples built in such high places? Like,
right.
why is it in the mountains? Why couldn't they just build it in the cities like the other temples? But all these holy sites have a reason for them, right? And I know a lot of people who visited overseas of even countries like Cambodia and Vietnam and Thailand and China and Nepal, and have seen these temples as well, right? And just like in India. So that was a pretty big thing. And the other thing I also got out of it too was I really got to see how people live, and see how I fit into that as well, because people are poor there, and I did see harsh poverty, and and I looked at the exchange rate at the time, and I believe it was like about 50 rupees to $1, and what's $1 to me? It wasn't much, right? And then you look at the conversion. Well, to buy a bottle of water, it's 30 rupees, so it's like what, 60 cents? It's nothing, right? And you looked at it, and people were asking me for pesa, and a pesa is like a quarter in their dollar, so really it's nothing. It's pennies, but people are asking you for pennies, not even dollars and stuff. And, at first I was like, well, I'm not giving you anything. And then I thought about it, and I was like, all they're asking me is for a penny. You come to Canada, people are asking you for $1 and, $2 and $10, and, they want food. But these little kids and adults are asking you for just pennies. They don't want more than what you'll give them. And if you're giving them pennies at a time, they were happy with it. And I mean, that really opened up to my mind to the experience of seeing how people lived and not taking granted for what they could get versus, unfortunately, sometimes in North America, even, I've told you these stories before too. I've had people on the street ask me, hey, do you have $1? And I don't give money to people on the street. What I do is I'll buy them food, or if I have something with me, if I have an apple, if I have an orange juice or something with me, I'll give them that juice, unopened, of course, unbitten. And I've had people look at me, it's like, what am I supposed to do with this? And I just look at them, well, you're supposed to drink it or eat it, because isn't that what you want the money for anyways? So it was an interesting, it's an interesting mind-opening experience.
Yeah, this might be a tip, but there is a difference between asking and demanding. So I've walked by some homeless guys in Calgary and such too, and sometimes they'll be like, "Give me $50," and that's not asking, that's demanding. And there's a major difference, because demanding can often come from a place of insecurity and pride, whereas asking can often come from a place of humility. And I think that's very much true in spirituality as well. If you have a reverence for God, then you want to ask God for what you desire versus demand God for what you desire.
Right. And what you just said actually goes right into my next point as well. So my next point was really, not something that I've done a lot of, or I don't know if you've done a lot of this or not. I mean, you can tell me and tell the listeners as well. But I think one huge life-shifting moment for many people can be the experiences they have. And I think sometimes some of the biggest experiences we need to have sometime is meet people who are struggling in life. I think it gives us a better perspective of where we are. I think it allows us to be a little bit more grateful as well for what we have. Not saying that it's a good thing that people are struggling, because it's really not, right? I mean, there's a lot of people, we've talked about this in other episodes as well, that are suffering because of mental problems or, drugs or an abuse of situations, or just really got into financial problems and never could figure their way out. I mean, there's hundreds of reasons why people are where they are in life, right? But I mean, just having the ability to talk to somebody somebody who's been violent and then has been violent towards others or has experienced violence. I mean, that can really help you understand a mindset of somebody, not saying that that's a good or a bad thing, but really to understand where that person came from can really give you some perspective on how to live your own life and maybe in a better way and not be in a position how, that person has put themselves in, right? And same thing if someone's over, on drugs and stuff, is obviously have the right places to talk to these type of people. But even talking to somebody who's abused drugs and has then stopped and really find out the life that they lived and the struggles they had to go through, because it is a tough thing that people, I've heard about people that have crack addictions. They don't want anything more than the next crack, the next hit, the next fix, right? And they'll do anything for it. And they'll, and people who have gone through that type of experience have come out of it and, and have changed their life. They'll tell you about the experience of coming off that type of drug is not easy. It's a brain, it really does put your brain through a trip.
Like a dependency.
Yeah, and there's people who do the same thing with alcohol abuse, right? That's why they have the 12-step program that you can go to, and you can. I'm not sure if you could be a part of a 12-step program even if you're not an alcoholic. I think it'd be kind of an interesting thing.
Can.
Yeah, I think just maybe
12-step for drugs, narcotics, sex. I think those are some of the major ones.
Right. So could you go to them even if you're not, I guess suffering from any of those ailments?
Addictions, yeah.
Or
you still can go to 12-step groups, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, right? Because it really gets you in touch with people, right?
So,
have you?
Yep.
Wow. So, I mean, that's great. So you've already kind of put that idea into fruition years ago, it looks like, at this point.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So if you don't mind me asking, why did you end up there?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but it was a different kind of 12-step group in the sense that it was on codependency. So, becoming too dependent or reliant on others in an unhealthy way, maybe they're your voice. So you have no personal expression and you let others tell others what you feel about yourself or the situation or the circumstance. And you depend on, people well to do that, or just to live life. You can't even figure out your way, depend on yourself enough to, order something at fast food or whatever. So, I mean, there's so many layers to codependency, but that was maybe not the exact thing that I needed, but it was enough that it brought some healing to my life and some confidence back to my life.
Wow. Well, and great. That's a great example. Thanks for sharing that too. I mean, you're definitely sharing some very personal experiences on this episode for sure. And, and deep ones too. They're not superficial. They're very personal. And I like that idea. Right. And I think if the more we talk to people that have gone through these type of experiences, or, I know they're supposed to be very safe houses almost for people who have gone through this type of, drug abuse or whatnot, and they're looking to better themselves. If we have the ability to join these and really just hear some of the stories of what people would do just to get, something that they're really dying to have, we probably may think twice about drinking or, doing drugs or certain type of drugs again. We might think about it because saying, wow, man, that guy had to, I don't know, kill somebody to get a drink. I mean, how many people would do that? Not a lot of us want to. So when you hear a story that someone may tell you, it might make you a better person because you learn from the experience of other people, right? And isn't that really the true essence of a genius, is learning from other people's experience?
Mm-hmm. Well, and we often hear about like entrepreneurial burnouts, right? I've been listening to a little more Chris Ducker as of late, and he talks about his burnout in 2009, in which he was in the chair for so long that he had to have his back operated and spinal fluids removed so that he could feel normal again. So that's the whole hustle mentality. We've talked about that a little bit before in the episode on rest. Going again, it's a theme. I talked about having a panic attack earlier. So there's just so many things that can go wrong with burnout and pushing too hard and hustling and grinding and going as fast as you can, as hard as you can all the time.
Right. Good point. And so what's your last point, I think?
Yeah, I was going to talk about when I discovered the love of writing. I think maybe if people for people who know me already, it's kind of like a foregone conclusion. It seems like, yeah, you've been doing that forever. But honestly, like I think there was a moment where I was reading an Og Mandino book 2 or 3 years ago, and I was for some reason I was just like kind of saying to myself, yeah, I'm gonna become a successful writer. This is what I'm gonna do. And I was probably doing quite a bit of writing already. To 2011, I was contracting with Tune City, so I was writing for the Tune City blog in the music industry, and I was getting a lot of experience that way. But even prior to that, putting up my own websites, like if I really looked through the threads of commonality between a lot of these projects, I probably would have maybe realized sooner that writing is a bit of a passion of mine. But since then, I'm building stuff at Music Entrepreneur HQ. Been doing a lot of that lately, and sometimes even just writing presentations for the question. So there's so many things now where I'm doing quite a bit of writing and doing it as more than a living as well.
Right on. And I think that's one of the things that you also pushed me through. I remember when I first met you, and I'm pretty sure I've shared this story, but
Yeah.
one of the things that I said to you is like, hey, well, I want to blog. And you said, hey, well, I'll go write.
That's right.
So you made it really easy. I mean, pretty not rocket science type of an answer, right? I mean, you're pretty much told me what I needed to hear. But even with that said, right, I mean, I've also started developing that within myself again, right? I mean, I know when I was in elementary, my teachers would tell me that my English was poor. I could never amount to anything in writing, or I wouldn't be great at it, and not very encouraging at all, right? And put yourself at a grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, still not comfortable with who the confidence I had in myself at that time. And now you have people that you trust, these teachers telling you, you suck, and you'll never be great at English, and you'll never be a good writer, and you'll have to work at it, and you'll probably be better to focus on math. And that's exactly what I did, right? I focused on math at the time, and my numbers are good, and I'm a very good, I understand finances pretty decently. I'm not a Robert Kiyosaki, I'm not a Donald Trump, but I have the basic understanding of how to run my financial life, and what it takes to still be successful within that, right? And but talking to you really put me back on that path of writing again, right? So that's what I've been doing. And a couple of years ago I started, I think we had this conversation about 2 years ago, so I started writing, and you helped me start my website with Discover Your Life Today, and that's kind of where I started posting stuff on there, and started my own little blog experience, and just kind of experimenting on what I was good at writing about and how I could. And even now that we've started recording these episodes, I've gone back and started putting more time and effort into writing for the blog that I had created myself, and said, hey, if we can build an audience at Using Your Power, then I can also build an audience at Discover Your Life Today as well. So there's so many different things that we can do, and the writing is just massive, right? I mean, it's an inspiring not only to yourself, but to the people who read what you write.
And Seth Godin is somebody that writes every single day, and that discipline is just amazing. And I know I keep raising him as an example all the time. I guess I just really resonate with him. It's not like I don't think he has a podcast of his own. Maybe he does, but he just seems to pop up again and again on various guests as a guest on different shows that I do listen to. So I guess I resonate with him a lot. But yeah, creating that discipline for that writing. I mean, it's something you're passionate about and you want to be good at, then that's how you do it. You put something out there all the time. And it's great that, Discover Your Life Today could definitely tie in with what we're doing here at Using Your Power. There's such commonalities between the two and the overall vision, I think. So
Absolutely, and same as the the website you have going as well with the music entrepreneur as well, right? So
yeah.
There's so many different things. I mean, the music is definitely a little bit different genre than, of course, what we're focusing on. But again, if you want to be better in life, it's just you're just focusing on more of a niche market where you can be better in music, right? So it's really a great place, and it does have a place where people can go and really see how they can better themselves and market themselves better, and if they want to with the music, right? So
that's right.
And of course, definitely encourage that as well, because of course I've seen the work you've put into it, and again, all the different writing that you've put into it, and all the podcasts you've put into it, and all the changes you've made to that website, and grown, right? So I mean, that's huge, right? So, and I don't think if you hadn't encouraged me, I don't and this is, again, maybe I'm patting myself on the back a little bit, but, I know you would have probably kept writing, but I think your writing has also changed because,
It has.
you can see that potentially there's another guy that wants to learn how to write just as good as you do, or, and I'm coming after you for competition wise, I'm going to start writing I want to write just as good or even better. So I want to push you to write better than you write as well.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And I think, with the stuff that I write, maybe people I think it's one of the reasons we started this podcast was to go deeper into different topics. And I think that's probably part of what's people's resonating with over at Music Entrepreneur HQ as well, is this statement totally applies to this podcast or any of the materials that you delve into, which is there's no cure-all. Maybe that's one of the reasons why people keep coming to the power of your subconscious mind. You're one of the people that have read that post, perhaps. Well, that's not a cure-all. It's just one book. It's just one idea from one man. And I think it's the same with us. This is just one episode of a many multi-episode serial podcast and ideas coming from two guys that have learned a lot through our experiences in the books we've read and all that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, just experiences of two guys. So this is not a cure-all either. Life-shifting moments are amazing and they're cool when we happen, but we don't always cause them to happen. We're often at effect. Like when my dad passed away, obviously I had a decision about what to do with my life and what to do moving forward, but I had no control over the fact that he passed away. That was something that's part of my history. So there's no cure-all.
No, not at all. And you had to learn, how to live, and I'll put that in quotations without him, quotations again.
Yeah.
And because I don't think, he's ever really gone. I'm sure there's still lots of memories and lots of little things that he said to you that, that make you think about life today, right? Even something he may have said to you when you're younger and it maybe meant nothing, but maybe when you're walking down the street and you're like, oh crap, I get it. I get what he means now, right? I got it. Finally, I get it, because now you're at that place in life where it can be implemented and understood a lot better, right? So that's awesome.
Sure. I think he was the kind of person that led by example a lot. So I definitely learned a lot watching him growing up and seeing the kind of guy that he was, often engaged in tons of reading and some music and a lot of computer stuff with websites and emails and videos. I mean, yeah, he's a Renaissance guy as much as I am. So
right on. And I've said this before too. It's like I really do feel that you pretty much just took over from where your dad left off.
Yeah.
You're passionate about all the same stuff, about video, music, writing, people. Just like he was. From I've never met him, but from everything you've told me and everything the listeners know about your dad as well, just through these stories, I do believe that you're carrying on that legacy that way, right? And
yeah, I think our personalities were very different, but the trajectory has been very much the same, or the mission has been very much the same. So
absolutely, well said. And just kind of moving into my last point, it kind of has to do with a father and son or a father and daughter. I think one of the biggest life shifting moments is when you're having kids or have children eventually.
Makes sense.
And one of the things I know my wife and myself are right now in the process of doing is, we're in that step where we want to have children now, and that's kind of what we're working on, and that's where we are kind of focused on, right? And not putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, just kind of, go with the flow, kind of the idea, right? And, we understand that having kids is not going to be easy, but we do understand that if we do all the right things before we have kids, we can then be better prepared for them when they do come, right? I know
for sure
it's not always something you can plan on, and sometimes kids will just happen as it is, right? I mean, we all know the person in high school that had a kid, and we all know that person who had a kid at 25, and we all know that person who got married and had children, or something happened from there on.
Or much later in life.
Yeah, much later in life. Like I have a friend of mine that was in their 40s when they had a child, and I'm 38 right now. My wife's 33 right now, and she's gonna kill me if I got that age wrong. But actually think think she
She's
just turned
29.
She actually just turned 34. She was just 33 before this episode.
Okay.
So she is going to kill me.
Perpetually 29.
Yeah, we're gonna keep her at 29. That's right. But we're at the right place now, where we're like, hey, you know what, having children is right for us right now. If it happened naturally at a different time, hey, no problem, we would have kept going. But we wanted to plan the best we could for our children, because we knew it was important for us to focus on that, right? And being able to focus on the children and not just focusing on our relationship. So we really took that time to build on it first, to make sure then we can have children and then focus on them as well, right? So I know I hear from people all the time that as soon as you have a child, it will change your life. And I do believe it, because from what I understand is that your whole attention is now on this child. And sometimes, unfortunately, divorce does happen because a lot of people do take their attention off their spouse and focus it solely on their children, right? So, and that can happen. So if you're out there and you have a child, make sure you're also focusing on your spouse as well. And because, you don't want to neglect the people that you love.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't think based on everything I've heard, I have obviously not had kids, but based on everything I've heard, I do believe that could be a very major life-shifting moment, and just holding a new life in your hands and realizing how that came about and everything is pretty amazing. And obviously I've witnessed others go through that, so.
Right. And, it's funny. I remember when I was a little younger, probably in my early teens and late teens, anytime me and my mom would have an argument, and, she would always use the one statement on me. She's like, wait till you're a parent. She would always say that to me. She's like, I think that was her I rest my case statement.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, whatever, whatever, right? And I never really thought of anything of it. And now as I've grown up, and I've definitely matured a lot more, and humbled myself and understand what she means, right? So I understood what she meant a lot more, with all the different things that she used to say as well, and all the arguments that we've had, and all the, I don't want to call it arguments, but just misunderstandings maybe, and a lot of them were sometimes, I guess, arguments too. There's nothing wrong with them. But it was a way for us to connect, and she really did say that. She's like, wait till you're a parent, you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. And I believe now, once I'm ready now with me and my wife to have children, and I do start really understanding some of the things that they were saying, my mom and my dad as well, right? Just kind of, my dad really never said that. He's more of the silent type of person that would say it that way, right. But he was just like, all right, yeah, no problem. Wait till you're there, right? And that's just, he gives you that look, where my mom just literally directly says it to you. So they're a little different on their way of teaching. But it's true, right? I mean, I even, my mother-in-law lives with us as well, and I listen to her and I chat with her as well, and I get the idea of how she raised my wife and her brother and stuff as well, and I can see how me and my wife will be, and how we'll be able to use the knowledge that both our parents have to be best parents as we could possibly be.
Yeah. And I think it's a catch-all statement saying, wait till you get to make the decisions about what happens with your kids and what you feel is best to expose them to and not expose them to, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Yeah,
no, well put. I think you summarized my whole point in about 15 words.
Perfect. That's awesome. What are your closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts, wow. This has been a great talk. I think that there's plenty of life-shifting moments daily if we really think about it. You've brought this up before. There's the book, The Slight Edge, and that whole premise of that book is really every decision you make is either going to take you in a positive direction, or every decision you make is going to take you in a slightly negative direction. And the compound of those decisions will give you a positive or a negative life at the end, right? So really, I think looking at every moment that comes about, looking at how things are going for yourself and where you want to be, and really listening to your heart and learning from everything you experience is going to be super important. If you're looking at the future, work for it. If you need money, work for it. Do the right things. Don't waste your time. Those are the life-shifting moments I think we need to have and understand, that there are times to work and there is a time to play, and we need to focus on those things. One of the things that I wanted to really say was understand who we are as people. Understand who you are as a person. Where do you fit into the universe? And I think you'll create enough life-shifting moments once you understand.
And I think I'd just like to reiterate that we don't orchestrate life-shifting moments. There's moments that I'm waiting for. There's breakthroughs that I'm waiting for, just like probably many of you listening right now. You're going, this thing's good and this thing's good, but this other thing over here, like, I just feel like I'm a mess, or it's not happening. It's not coming together. I'm losing hope. I'm losing heart. I'm losing faith, and I don't know what's going to happen next. And, I have the same struggles, just the same as you do. There's breakthroughs I'm waiting for. There's life-shifting moments that I'm waiting for, but I'm believing in them. So I would encourage you to do the same. Believe in them, believe for them, and they will happen and they will come. But once you go to the top of the mountain, you see further, and there's another mountain ahead, and that's always how it works.
Unless you get to Everest.
Yeah, I guess, unless it's like literally Everest.
Yeah, literally Everest. Yeah, not figuratively, like I think you were saying.
Yeah, exactly. Figuratively, there's always a higher mountain to climb, but that's kind of the cool thing about life. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to your comments and some of your own life-shifting moments. Love to hear about them, and we'll look forward to interacting with you. Find us online at usingyourpower.com. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.